Here's my review of X-Men 97, Season 1, Episode 2. This was another great episode, as a lot happens in this episode as we pick up right at the end of Episode 1, where, the biggest plot twist, in Professor Xavier's will, it went to Magneto, and now he is in charge of the X-Men and the X-Mansion. And this, of course, kind of causes a lot of skepticism there have been enemies for as long as they can remember. And it's very interesting because, Magneto, he says how he does want to honor his friend because they were friends, even if in many ways he does disagree with his methods. And of course, the X-Men are very skeptical of him. And it's just a very interesting concept because, Magneto is such an interesting character because in many ways, his views make sense because of his history, but they are wrong. And so it's just this very complex situation that we have here. And the fact that Professor X entrusted Magneto, it's a very interesting place to take the story, but one I'm really liking. And the main thing where this kind of kicks off is, well, the government kind of comes to arrest Magneto, and he offers a trial. He's like, and you do get a pretty cool action thing here. But this trial is just very interesting, I think. Where he stands before the judge, he's kind of talking about, it's really on the nose and obvious about the obvious prejudice against mutants. And it's just very impactful. I think that Magneto is just so well written here. And it's just almost kind of like scary just how realistic and how much this kind of relates to the real world problems today. It's just very interesting. I thought it was done very well here. And we do get some great action as well. And this kind of leads from these mutant riots. And this kind of leads to another kind of very interesting turn where Storm gets attacked and she gets her powers taken away. And she decides to leave the X-Men. I didn't expect that at all, but it's very interesting. And which part of me is was like the idea only in episode 2. Storm was one of my favorite characters in the original series, so I'm sure she'll be back 100%. But I hope she is. But it's just a very interesting direction for the story, one I really liked. But I mainly just really like the conversations between Scott and Eric. As Scott, Cyclops is obviously, of course, super skeptical of Magneto. He's their X-Men's arch nemesis. But it's just so interesting because, Magneto, in many ways, you clearly can tell that he kind of does want what he wants, which was always kind of mutant, kind of to reign above all mutant supremacy, but he wants to honor his friend Xavier by truly wanting coexistence. And it's just a very interesting and I thought very beautifully done story here. Also, another main plot is, of course, how, Jean Grey's super pregnant and she gives birth in this episode. And there's also some interesting parts where, there's some cool parts where Rogue, because the doctors won't deliver the baby because they're mutants, Rogue uses her stealing abilities to touch the doctor and then steal the intellect of the doctor to know how to properly deliver a baby. I thought that was a very cool idea. Like this scene right here where, she steals the powers of the intellect of the doctor and knows the proper medical procedures. That part was one of the coolest parts right there. So yeah, I thought this was another really great episode. Only 2 episodes in, but this is probably my favorite episode so far. But of course, only second episode. But this show is really, really good, and I'm hoping that it stays this way. I'm a little worried just because Marvel is very bad at finales. But for what it is, so far it's pretty good, and this episode was great as well.